Swerve when I drive. What an excellent episode of AEW Dynamite this week. The pacing on the show was fantastic. I gotta just jump straight into it, first of all. AEW, Tony Khan, specifically you. You got too much goddamn money to not figure out a tangible way for your United States audience to have another way to watch your programming without having a cable provider. I think it's kind of ridiculous that the second biggest promotion doesn't have a reliable second option outside of cable to watch their programming. Maybe that could be a huge reason as to why ratings are dipping, because a lot of people can't get to your content. So, yeah, you may want to think about that down the road when you negotiate whatever big distributing streaming deal or whatever you got going on, because to not be able to stream it on HBO Max on their sports package is kind of ludicrous. So I don't know what's going on. Into this week's Dynamite. All right. So opening the show, I thought it was an interesting segment. The show opened up with Joe. Well, before we got to Joe, Swerve Strickland came out to address the audience. And this Atlanta crowd was pretty good. I got to give it to the ATL. They represented pretty well throughout the show. They were hot for some wrestling, and it was a packed house. So it looked good on TV. It presented well. It was solid. You know, Swerve came out, said what he had to say, talking about his disappointment with losing and not coming away with the AEW championship. Now, we all knew, or those of us with sense knew, that Swerve likely was not going to win the championship on that night. But, which was cool. I was cool with that. But, you know, long as it's booked correctly, which it was, the right guy went over, and the guy that ate the pinfall, Hangman, was the correct call. So Swerve is protected in the match. So it'll continue his feud going forward with Samoa Joe. Now you bring out these characters. I mean, Joe comes out. He flaunts his shit in front of him and says, you know, I'm the champ, man. Look, polishing in his belt with his towel, the whole 9 yards. And then, as those two begin to heat up, the Undisputed Kingdom comes out. Hit the music. Here comes Adam Cole in the wheelchair, the black wheelchair. And he's talking to these guys and saying, hey, look, everything you're doing is cute and all, but it ain't gonna matter. Wardlow's the next guy up. Now, again, the ranking system, I don't know what the hell's going on with that. I don't know if Tony Khan's still doing it. He rolled it out, but he's not doing it anymore. I don't know. We'll get back to that at a later date, I guess. I don't know. But the Battle Warrior, the 8-man thing that they had at Revolution, Wardlow wins. So now Wardlow is going to go on to face Samoa Joe at Big Business next week. We'll get to that later. But this whole program was just a way to set up Joe versus Wardlow. Now it's going to be interesting to see how they book that. I mean, they're clearly trying to build up Wardlow, and they still want to protect Joe. So is there going to be some outside shenanigans in that match to prevent a straight up finish? We'll find out. I wouldn't be mad, because you want to protect both guys down the road to further other storylines. Now, on to the FTW championship match with Hook versus Brian Cage. Now, what's going on with the FTW championship? Is it a real belt or not? I don't know. I don't pay attention too much to all the dirt sheets and all of that stuff. I'm just a casual. I like to turn on the programming and watch it, man. So I don't understand. Is it a real belt or not? Because if it is a real belt, we should be, AEW should be featuring it more like it's hardcore championship. Like it's legit hardcore championship. And you should be bringing that belt over to GCW, to be honest, Game Changer Wrestling. If it's a legit hardcore championship, it should be defended in hardcore promotions as well as AEW. So that's just an outside guess. That's just me thinking outside the box there. But you got to bring some kind of legitimacy to it, because other than that, it's costuming. He's just coming out with a belt that's not, legitimized. Like, I don't know if it is or isn't. You guys can tell me in the comments. But Hook won in a solid hardcore match against Brian Cage. The next segment was with Christian. Now, I don't want to go through segments because I just want to talk about the stuff that I cared about the most. I mean, it's Copeland and Christian Cage 3 in an I Quit match. So they had a whole segment go on, a whole bunch of shenanigans happened, and, you know, Danny Garcia and, you know, this whole stuff happened. Doesn't really matter because it all comes to Copeland and Christian Cage setting up to be some big business. It's a lot of stuff that was put in play and put in motion during this week of Dynamite to set up next week's show. And that is good structuring. This whole night actually has some good structuring and really excellent pacing. There was no drag in the show. It was just one after another, one segment after another. So solid all around. Kyle O'Reilly promo, good to see him back wrestling again. It was a chance that he wasn't going to wrestle anymore, and to see him coming back, saying that he wants to kind of, you know, walk on his own and get his feet under his, you know, get himself together before he even thinks about joining up in any groups. He said he wants to be on his own for now, and that's going to be an interesting storyline on itself because you already know the United Kingdom is going to play some part in, you know, how Kyle O'Reilly gets along on his journey. So that, you know, good to see Kyle O'Reilly. The next segment, the Young Bucks segment. It was an interesting segment. The Bucks, they came out, they still doing the whole EVP gimmick. You know, I don't hate the gimmick, first of all. I just wish they would have gone with this gimmick a year ago. I say it all the time. I've said it probably on video, or I've said it probably before on my podcast, the Voice Junkie podcast, by the way, that they're just a year too late. The whole gimmick is just a year too late, man. When you had Phil Brooks, CM Punk there, this EVP shit would have been hot as fish grease. But you elected not to do business because of your, you know, feelings and your emotions towards a worker or a person, which in this case was CM Punk. They should have did business, man. This would have been excellent business that CM Punk was in part of it, and they would have did the whole, you know, Vince McMahon corporate angle thing, but they missed the opportunity. But now they're doing it now. They're doing it now, and it just, you know, it was on deaf ears for a little while. Some people liked it, and listen, the Young Bucks got their little people in the internet. Let's just face it. They got their circle of fans that really enjoy what they do regardless of what they do, which is okay. You know, everyone has their fans, but in this case, most people, casuals included, kind of was like, oh, they're just a jerkier versions of themselves with suits on now. Okay, cool. But now, when you add Okada, I'm not going to, you know, Okada changes everything. I love the angle of them adding Okada to the Elite. They got rid of Kenny Omega. They put Hangman Page on suspension because of him bugging out on the referees during the Revolution match. And they added Okada. Now, it was a great play there because you had to figure out a way to incorporate Okada, knowing that everyone pretty much knows in the industry that Mercedes Moné is going to appear in Boston for big business. That's going to be their next big acquisition that's going to appear because they have Will Ospreay now, who's on the show. We'll get to Williff in a second. But Eddie Kingston was attacked, double-crossed by Okada. He revealed himself to be a part of the Elite, which was a pretty cool swerve. I knew something was kind of amiss when he came out during the segment because Kingston came out to confront the Bucks, and then Okada came out for some reason. And I know he didn't have any affiliation with Kingston, and then he had a suit on, and then he did his whole little thing, his rain maker gimmick thing in front of the stage, and then Money came down. The last time I seen Money come out from the stage is when the Young Bucks did their little pose. And the Young Bucks haven't had the money come out. Now Okada is going to get the whole money thing. So now when Okada comes out, he'll get the money props coming down. So for his entrance. So I think that's kind of cool. So a great angle for the Bucks. It just injects so much life into their whole EVP gimmick now. Now we off to the races. You got one of the top stars in the world, one of the best wrestlers in the world, a part of your crew now. So now let's see what you do from there going forward. So I love that. And now we go on to, really the main event of the whole night. And that was, Willif or Will Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher. Kyle Fletcher is a part of Don Callis' whole family thing. And, that whole gimmick is going too far. But hopefully that'll come to some kind of end as Will Ospreay systematically goes through the entire family one by one. So that'll be interesting how that all dissolves, because it's going to dissolve at some point without Ospreay being in the group, because he's just a megastar. But again, another great match by Will Ospreay against Kyle Fletcher. I mean, Will Ospreay, he put on another banger of a match that he put on like a Revolution. He put this one on during Dynamite on national TV, which is important because this is one of your biggest acquisitions. You want to have these big matches on television to introduce Will Ospreay to a bunch of people who don't know who he is in the United States. So to feature him in the way they featured him last night was key. It was very important because, as they begin to, build a relationship with the audience with this new star, it makes definitely the money worthwhile as far as the money they spent to get him over there. But again, another banger match. I mean, the one criticism that a lot of people like to have with Ospreay is that, it's a lot of spots. He is. I was trying to think of someone that he reminded me of. Of course, there's some Kenny Omega in there, but as far as one of the old school wrestlers, I'd have to say I get some Dynamite Kid from him. He's really explosive at what he does. Like every move, every turn is explosive. And he's just he's not the biggest guy, but he's just a ball of dynamite, and he's going to be great, man, if he's booked correctly. So, he wins the match in another great instant classic, if you want to call it that, as far as today's matches. And I mean, what a solid show. I don't really have any bad criticism. Every match was solid. Every single segment led on to the next show, whether it was Collision, as far as the Elite going to be on Collision with Okada now this Saturday. Everything led somewhere. Even the championship tournament that's starting up because the vacated titles, that's going to start off on Rampage Friday. So everything had somewhere that it needed to go, and it got to where it needed to be. So shout out to AEW for some solid booking, finally. And hopefully they keep this momentum going for big business, because big business is setting up to be some real big business. Trust me.